Hi, I'm Othais, and this is the Colt model of, well, this gets a little bit tricky. Colt technically called it the Modified Automatic Pistol Model of 1905, but the Ordnance Department called it the Model of March 1907, at least for a while. But, as we'll soon see, it was further modified in 1909, so I guess we could more properly call it the Model of 1907/09. Oh boy. Before I explain all that in detail though, let's get this into Lightbox. With an overall length of 8 1/4 inch and weighing in at 2.1 pounds, for the time, this was actually a fairly compact semi-automatic pistol. It uses a detachable box magazine with a capacity of 7 rounds of what would be the Colt 1905 version of the .45 ACP cartridge, a caliber dictated by the US government. Before we get too deep into today's episode, I will say that this pistol represents the last of the pre-1911 developmental stepping stones that we could lay our hands on. Special thanks again, by the way, goes out to our buddy Sven at Manticore Arms for loaning us this and the other pieces so far in this particular series. Give him a visit and share your appreciation for this great opportunity. Literally could not have done this without Sven. But it now seems that the time has come because we do not have access to the trials models of 1909 or 1910. If you happen to have one handy or know of a collection with one willing to let us handle it with care, please let us know. Alright, with that covered, let's review what we know so far. Hitting the high notes, we've covered John Moses Browning's first locked breech, slide-operated pistol, produced by Colt's Patent Firearms as the Model 1900, named retroactively. That's because it was replaced in trials by the improved military model of 1902. Despite being pretty neat, the Colt automatics were chambered for a .38 caliber cartridge, and the US government had been somewhat regretting their switch away from the .45 caliber revolver all those years ago. The .38 caliber New Army revolvers had been extremely modern at the time of their adoption, but repeated updates, including a modification to handle the slightly more powerful .38 Smith & Wesson cartridge, couldn't halt the complaints coming in from the field. US forces now stationed abroad, particularly in the Philippines, were having concerns about stopping power, the ability to smack a man down in one hit. This resulted in a debate between the old heavy .45 and the new modern .38. Ultimately, trials were conducted, the infamous Thompson-Lagarde tests, which favored bigger, heavier bullets and put the US on the path back to a .45 caliber minimum bore for their handguns. Adapting their pistols to the harsher cartridge, Colt released the Model 1905, both to Army trials and the commercial market. While it garnered interest, it proved to be a bit unwieldy and ultimately was not adopted for military service. Last episode, we explored the 1905 in some detail and let it beat the ever-loving crap out of Mae's hand. We also led our story into the US trials of 1907, during which the revolvers were eliminated, including the Fosbury, and we saw the Bergmann, Noble, and White Merrill pistols fail to impress. The Luger did alright, but was ultimately abandoned as well. Only the Savage and Colt would remain. Noted desirable features of the Savage included its simplicity of construction, the accessibility of the parts, a lack of screws or flat springs, the 8-round capacity, the center of gravity, the slide was easily worked, and the magazine could be released by the shooting hand. The Colt was found remarkable for its flatness, compactness. It was described as neat in appearance. The slide was similarly easy to operate, and it was easy to carry on one's person. Despite these compliments, changes were recommended for both pistols. On the Savage, the grip could be more ergonomic. The metal grip plates should be wood instead. The detent for the safe position should be more positive, and the front sight should be secured better. Changes specific to the Colt included strengthening the trigger stirrup and lengthening its pin. A spur hammer was recommended, although this came from handling a second sample pistol that was submitted that already had a spur hammer. It was also felt the magazine catch should be able to be worked by the shooting hand. Both pistols received 3 identical criticisms. Both mostly used side ejection when vertical would be better. Neither had a loaded chamber indicator, and neither had an automatic safety. I just want to point out something here that I believe will come up again later. The extras wanted on the Colt pistol largely match up with what was already available on the new model of German Luger. A grip safety, vertical ejection, a loaded chamber indicator, a magazine catch for the shooting hand, and while not apparent in this episode, we'll later see the Colt take on a more aggressive rake in the grip. Yeah, I suspect there was a strong Luger influence on what would later become the Colt 1911. At the end of the trials, it was recommended that the Colt and Savage pistols be assigned to 3 troops of cavalry. So, in May of 1907, the U.S. Ordnance Department issued a circular requesting bids for the manufacture of 200 Colt and 200 Savage pistols, plus 100,000 rounds of ammunition, which was honestly a more pressing issue in some ways. In April of 1907, Chief of Ordnance Crozier noted that the commercial 45 Colt ammunition available for their 1905 pistol had been performing better than the notoriously poor government cartridges, which had actually been designed by Theory to impart an 800 foot-per-second muzzle velocity to a 230 grain bullet.
The UMC commercial ammo sported a 200 grain bullet in a case just 0.032 inch shorter.
Both of these cartridges started with a bullet-seating cannelore in the case, but this feature was dropped in 1907. The commercial case length was accepted by the military, but paired with their own 230 grain bullet. UMC was directed to produce an 800 foot-per-second muzzle velocity and contracted to produce 100,000 cartridges at a price of $19.50 per 1,000. This would be dubbed the Model 1907 cartridge. Okay, the ammo's sorted, so let's get a look at the guns. Now you'll never believe this, but Colt bid on producing its own pistols and won. The price would be $25 per pistol, including all the requested changes. As for Savage, well, they actually didn't submit a bid. Okay. Savage isn't our focus today, so I'm just going to cover this briefly. You see, Colt was really just modifying their existing 1905 pistol, which was already in serial production. Savage, however, was still hand-making their prototypes from scratch and felt that a mere 200-unit order wasn't worth the extreme expense. Okay, scratch the Savage pistol and I guess dust off the Luger. In May, the Secretary of War would approve purchasing 200 of these for trial, plus special ammunition from Germany because the US wasn't currently making an appropriate powder for the Luger. Interestingly, it would be some months before the order was actually communicated to DWM. In the meantime, in June of 1907, Savage would come around with another offer to produce their pistols for $75 a pop, or the government could have the license to manufacture the samples themselves. Chief of Ordnance Crozier declined both options. In August, Savage again offered production, now $65 a piece, which was finally accepted with a contract signed in October, which is also when the 200 Lugers were finally ordered through DWM's agent Hans Tauscher. We won't be following the Luger, however, because in April of 1908, DWM canceled the contract. This was likely because of the impending order from the German army for the P08, plus the high expense of making a particular frame for the Americans. Taking time to make a non-standard frame for a long shot at a US contract was probably a fruitless venture. Well, I guess it's time for us to start back at the beginning, because the first gun the government managed to lay hands on would be Colt's solution to their various problems, which kind of brings us to this gun here, although it's actually a bit beyond the first round of improvements. Let's look at what they did. They've taken on the spur hammer, added an automatic grip safety, attached a loaded chamber indicator, and reshaped the ejection port to make it kick out cases more vertically. Not visible from the outside, the stirrup transfer bar has been beefed up and its pin lengthened. Now, as far as I can tell, John Moses Browning was not involved in these particular upgrades. While he had designed a grip safety, this grip safety wasn't it. Instead, the pattern adopted was a mix of 2 designs, both from Colt's own men. George Tansley's design locked the hammer and the firing pin when it wasn't depressed. While simple to produce, it wasn't felt to be secure enough. Meanwhile, Carl Ebbets had developed his own solution, which used a far too complicated and delicate arrangement to withdraw the firing pin, but it did lock out the sear directly. The 2 patents would be combined, the firing pin lock and the sear lock, to give us, well, almost our pistol today. James Peard would provide the loaded chamber indicator as patented here. It was a simple spring-loaded device that was displaced when a cartridge was present in the chamber. The prototype, modified Model 1905, was shown to Ordnance in September of 1907, and after approval, the 200-unit order could begin. These would be serialed on their own, number 1 to 200. All would be shipped in March of 1908, although it would take until summer for Ordnance to produce the required holsters for field trials.
3 batches of 65 pistols each would be sent to cavalry troops in the Philippines, Iowa, and Minnesota. The remaining 5 would be sent to the School of Musketry in California.
There would also be a further 5 pistols ordered, but these were used as gifts and presentation pieces by Ordnance. They don't bear on the trial, at least that we know of. Now, the participating troops had their own existing revolvers withdrawn, excepting a small number held in reserve specifically for training horses. Blanks are apparently easier in a revolver, and there was no sense in trying to figure out how to make one for these pistols just for this trial. Other than that, the troops carried their new pistols through drill, target shooting, and maneuvers for the duration. Their experiences were reported to both the Cavalry Board and Ordnance and were later aggregated, along with some extra changes by the Cavalry Board in September of 1909. The results were not terrific. Let's start with the good. Accuracy was found to be excellent. The pistols were easy to carry. Having a 7th shot, one more than the revolver, was nice. The power of the .45 caliber cartridge was appreciated. The rate of fire was, in theory, excellent. And after that it gets rough, because excessive recoil was apparent and greatly slowed aimed fire. The grip was found to be awkward, and because of the grip's safety, you could not lower the hammer one-handed. That safety also tended to pinch the web of the hand between itself and the hammer when firing. Ouch. Jams were common, usually due to a failure of the magazine, though the feed ramp was also a frequent culprit. It also appears the extractor was adding to this problem. When the ammo did feed, the automatic firing of 2 or more shots happened a little too often. And perhaps worst of all, were numerous and possibly dangerous parts breakages. These were the usual culprits, by the way, magazine lips failing and the follower just shooting out, firing pins cracking up, but in at least one case, the slide lock managed to escape during firing, and the slide flew into the man's face. He only got a bruise, apparently. The worst offender, however, was the sear, which apparently accounted for the majority share of breakages across the board. There were even reports of pistols that would eventually fail, such that gripping the safety caused the firearm to discharge. I expect this was another damaged sear issue. Now, I should also mention 2 pistols received special modification. A set of Powell cartridge indicators were scavenged from previous Luger trials, modified and fitted to the new Colt 1907. These examples were reviewed directly by the Cavalry Board, and the indicator itself was found to be excellent. We love that. Weirdly though, it was abandoned from further trials. In the end, the Cavalry Board decided against the Colt pistol, and frankly still felt automatics were dangerous in the hands of your average serviceman. They'd be much happier to have a .45 caliber double-action revolver. This setback in testing was likely responsible for the decision to order 6,000 Colt new service revolvers in December of 1908. Like we've seen before, the Colt factory was actually kept in the loop, and its engineers were already making adjustments before the final report. The first of these, by the way, would be to the ammunition, as in early 1908 they realized that the narrow extractor groove on the 1907 cartridge was leading to some of the jamming. Testing revealed a wider groove greatly improved performance, so in April of 1908, US Ordnance would order another 100,000 rounds, now dubbed the Model 1908. And in November of that same year, Colt would submit an improved sear design to the Springfield Armory. This was basically thickened up and better heat treated and could be swapped right out 1-to-1 for the old fragile sears. The pattern was accepted, and Colt whipped up enough to send out its replacements for the trials pistols. That same month would also finally see the delivery of 200 Savage pistols. Again, this is not an episode on the Savage, so I'll just say that it received the same general improvements as the Colt, and there were immediate problems. These were inspected by Major Kenneth Morton, who immediately noted that the pistols appeared handmade and lacked interchangeability of parts. Also, roughly 1/3 were having major issues just in the initial test firing for inspection. All 200 had to be shipped back to Savage for repairs and reconditioning without ever being fielded. So I guess that really bailed the Colt 1907's poor performance out rather nicely. Alright, so this isn't a great handgun, but can it be saved? Well, that question is the true heart of the gun that we actually have here today. Because this pistol carries a number of improvements that were fitted to the model 1907 in late 1908 and early 1909, the first 3 samples of which were tested on January 26th. Those changes? Well, I'll skip my little tiny changes to say thickness here and hardening there. The new sear was added, of course, and I'll just show you the obvious. The ejection port was enlarged slightly. This helped make sure cases were clearing the action. A new, longer grip safety was fitted, which was paired with a slightly modified hammer. The longer tang helped prevent hammer bite. The longer spur made it easier to cock the pistol. Combined, however, they solved a major problem. Let me show you what I mean. Alright, here is our 1907/1909 pistol. Actual 1907s are extremely rare, only a couple examples still remain, as almost all of them were upgraded in this fashion. Where we left off just a second ago was talking about the changes to the hammer and safety. Now, the 1905 that preceded this did not have a grip safety, did not have a spur hammer, at least not at first. Once the 1907s and 1909s began to enter production, this hammer type would be added to the commercial 1905 so that Colt would only have to make one type of gun. So you can find a 1905 with the 1907 hammer, but that's not, anyway, you get the idea. So on this particular gun, the 1905, which the 1907 is basically just a modification thereof, the only manual safety, or automatic in this case, is a half-cock position for the hammer. So if you were to ready the pistol by racking the slide, you had one live in the chamber, and you wanted to put it on safe instead of carrying it with the hammer back and no manual safety, you would have to lower the hammer into the half-cock position. The easiest way to do this would be one-handed by pulling the trigger while riding the hammer, and then lowering it carefully into the correct position, and then yep, you're in good shape. It can't go forward and smack the firing pin. It can't, yeah, okay, we're good. This is the safe position. The problem with doing that on the grip safety model is, well, the grip safety. Now, this is again the upgraded model, so this guy's a lot longer. Pretend he's flush with the rear of the frame here. Pretend there's no extension there at all. Now let me show you something that really drove everybody nuts. We, let's say, rack the slide, which therefore puts the round into the chamber and has the hammer back. Then, we want to lower the hammer to the safe position because there is no manual locked out safety on this gun, just the automatic grip safety. Okay, let's try it like we normally would do. We'll just pull our thumb back, ride that hammer, and aha, no safety engagement whatsoever. That was a huge problem. It meant that you had to actually keep your whole hand on here, bring in your other hand in order to hold the hammer, and then ease it forward that way. This two-handed operation was considered to be extremely awkward, especially by cavalry members, who already didn't like having to two-hand load the mag and two-hand rack the slide. Although I don't understand the mag issue, we'll talk about that later. So, what did they do to fix it? Well, they made it so that the hammer itself can trip the automatic safety. So in the improved 09 version of the 1907, we can grip and go to depress our trigger, and yeah, that would dry fire, that's not what we want. Or we can thumb back on the hammer until it engages the safety. See it depressing the safety? And since the hammer is depressing the safety, we can pull the trigger. And as we lower the hammer, the interesting thing is our safety has actually gone ahead and jumped back. So this is even safer than usual, because if we accidentally slip this hammer while doing this right now, well, the automatic safety is locking the sear and it's locking the firing pin. And so a hard drop will not result in a negligent discharge. Another difference from the 1905 and the 1907 to a lesser degree is the ejection port. Here, on the 1905, it's very clearly designed to eject to the right. Here, on the 1907 or 1909, it's got a little room to further eject upwards, although we still have plenty of right-hand room. As a matter of fact, this was opened up a little bit more for the 1909, specifically because they were having some problems with failures to clear on extraction. So this is the furthest we went on this particular design in terms of modifying that ejection port. The way our extractor works, where it's placed, how it's fit, Generally all the same though. Realistically, this is a very minor modification of this particular pistol. The last obvious external difference between the 1905 and 1907, and also the 0709, is the inclusion of this loaded chamber indicator at the top left of the slide towards the rear. This guy almost looks like another extractor, but he's actually supposed to rise to the rear when the chamber is loaded. At the moment, I actually have a snap cap in the chamber, but unfortunately, it appears that the rim thickness is too low to trigger this particular device at the moment because it's still sitting nice and flush. However, I can take the end of my plastic pokey and set that guy back a little bit, and we'll see a little magic. Ooh, let me see if I can see that guy tipping up. Yeah, it's not a dramatic difference, but it's enough that you can put your finger on there and certainly feel that you have a loaded chamber, and it's some indication from the rear. Although I can certainly see why they complain that it didn't really show you very much. Now, just to be clear, this lanyard option on the left side of the 07 and 0709 pistols could have been found on specific trials guns from the 1905. This one happens to be a commercial model, so it was not included. But this is not a new invention for this gun, it's just one that you are unlikely to find on the 05 and always going to find on an 07 or 0709. Both guns, again, are 7-round magazine-fed pistols that release from the heel. Nice positive disconnect there, and a 45 caliber compatible magazine that sure looks a lot like the later 1911, which will be based on all of this. Disassembly of the pistol is still the same. We would depress this particular button at the front, and that would allow us to free the cross key out the left side very specifically, because it is keyed to go in one direction. A little bit awkward to do for the camera. Let's try that again. Gravity helps. All right, and then at that point, we can just pull the slide off to the rear. All right, as we try not to lose the key, we simply pull this guy back, and we are in. The fact that this can come off the back of the gun would obviously be a problem that they would rectify later. Now, we still have the parallel ruler system that people like to call it, the Browning barrel that doesn't so much tilt as it, I guess, tips, as we have 2 links that keep it, aligned as it goes up and down. We'll see this change later, obviously. We have our locking lugs that fit into the recesses in the slide up here. We have a set of recoil lugs underneath that help eat up some of that 45 recoil and keep it from being directed into links, instead shedding it into the frame, which is much more sturdy. The big reason I took this apart, though, because none of that is different from the 1905, is to actually take a look inside of this slide. It's kind of hard to make out, but essentially we have a secondary sear, a safety sear, that is powered by a flat spring at the front of the breech block. Unfortunately, at this point it has become chipped with age, or perhaps during the trials, but it would have been shoved into the firing pin, into a notch into the firing pin, and kept the firing pin from being able to go forward, at least far enough to discharge the firearm. Whenever the safety is tripped, it tips this little bean right here, this tiny little pin. And when that tips, as you saw, it causes this guy to rise. So if I go this way up, if I go that way down, this way up, that way down, that is locking and unlocking the firing pin, a secondary safety feature, part of the automatic safety. Excellent little bit of construction there, although I have a feeling it would wear out very quickly. I mean, this one again already has a little bit of damage. And just to show the other side of that relationship, we're looking at this little guy right here, and I'm going to depress that safety and release it a few times, and you can see that little motion's all it takes to pivot that little locking sear for the firing pin. Now, there are some critical bits that are just too difficult to see in this example, but that's okay, because we have our animator, Bruno.
Unlike most of our animations, we're only going to focus on 3 features this time. That's because mechanically, the 1907-09 is just a 1905 with some safety mechanisms added. We'll begin with the grip safety, which must be depressed in order to use the pistol. This can be done one of 2 ways, with the first and most obvious being to just grip the pistol. In this position, the pistol is ready to fire, if we release the safety though, which, by the way, is constantly pressed rearwards by this spring. It locks up the pistol in 2 ways. Let's look a little deeper. Here we can see the sear, which catches on a notch set in the hammer. Presently it's at full cock. With the pistol gripped, Pulling the trigger tips the sear and frees the hammer to fall, discharging the pistol. If we look back at our grip safety, we'll see that a small extension at its front is near the top of the sear. Releasing the grip safety pivots this extension into the path of the sear, preventing the hammer from being released. Gripping the safety frees the sear, and a pull of the trigger will again fire the pistol. Now, I did say there was a second way to activate the grip safety in order to lower the hammer one-handed. The shooter can cock back the hammer, which in turn tips the grip safety and frees the sear. Pulling the trigger now frees the hammer, which can be eased down all the way. The half-cock position of the 1905 has been abandoned thanks to the safety of having a shorter, inertia-dependent firing pin and another new safety feature. This is the way the pistol was expected to be carried. And just in case you're afraid that you might let the hammer slip while lowering it, or that something may bat the lowered hammer, an automatic firing pin block has been added. Here we can see it locking the firing pin from being able to travel forwards. It's constantly being held upwards by this flat spring. To ready our pistol, we would draw it from the holster, manually cock the hammer, take our grip, which, as we can see, pivots the firing pin block downwards, allowing us to now pull the trigger and fire the pistol. Alright, 1 grip safety, 2 lockups. The only other real change from the 1905 is the loaded chamber indicator. Fairly straightforward in construction, it's a flat spring extending from a small steel bar, keeping it constantly flexed into a flush appearance. A small extension tab juts out through a hole in the breech face, so when the chamber is empty, there isn't much to see. However, once we load a cartridge, the case head bears against the extension and causes the indicator to pivot at the rear, sticking out from the side, so the shooter knows the pistol is loaded. Alright, that really covers all the improvements. If you want to watch the core features, rewatch our episode on the Model 1905, which is still the heart of this design. Now, let's go shoot it.
Oh man, I'm so good at lowering that hammer. Oh, such an improvement. Now, the 3 sample pistols managed over 1,200 rounds with only 2 jams and 1 misfire. There was 1 breakage that affected a firing pin safety bolt and spring. This was a much better showing than the original 1907. So in June of 1909, Colt requested to withdraw all of the 200 trials pistols and rework them into this new 1909 pattern. Now this is going to be a bit confusing as there would be a distinctly different trials model of 1909, which we'll hopefully cover another day, if someone tells us where to find one. In theory, 60 pistols dodged this update, however most of those in the known dodging serial range have actually turned up later with the 1909 changes, so pure 1907s are extremely rare, as if being one of 205 trials guns wasn't enough. Now, while all this was happening, Savage finally got its act sorta together. Technically, they sent a 5-page letter arguing that Major Morton's inspection was BS and insinuating that he broke the pistols by being dumb. And then they started fixing them back up with improvements, because nothing was wrong with them. Again, not our pistol today, but worth mentioning, these went back into trial starting in March of 1909, where they again failed miserably. Numerous stoppages, breakages, it was so bad troops couldn't rely on them for apparently a traditional signaling practice of firing 3 shots in quick succession because the gun was guaranteed to jam in a 3-shot burst. So, by July of 1909, Savage requested a withdraw and upgrade program just like Colt had done. This process would take so long that we're actually not going to see Savage again in this particular episode. But, while we're still locked on July of 1909, let's talk about ammunition again. That model 1908 cartridge with its improved extractor groove had done a lot better than the previous. However, both the Colt and Savage pistols, although particularly with the Savage, they were imparting enough recoil to cause the bullets to set back in their cases. This then led to feed problems. So, the old seating cannelure was brought back in order to prevent the bullet from turtling. Also, they took the time to adjust the primer pocket to better match with that of the .30 caliber rifle cartridge then in service. Now, 200,000 cartridges were ordered, branded the model 1909. Okay, new ammo, newly reworked gun. Time to start testing again, which is where we run into some trouble in separating out these episodes from one another, because this, the 07/09, would be tested well into 1910, and while that was going on, John Moses Browning became involved again, and along with the engineers at Colt, put together a much more radically changed automatic pistol, which sort of starts its own micro-evolution. This pistol was influenced by initial reports that were not officially gathered together until after, well, this pistol was actually already in trials. So as I tell you about the official filings that start coming back around March of 1910, know that Colt was already reading them well ahead of that time and making a pistol for them. So anyway, what did Ordnance think of the 07/09? Well, they were still handy and accurate. The extra 7th round was still a plus, quite literally. They had performed very well on horseback when they worked, which was more often than the 1907, but not as often as they should, being all the time. The sears were behaving fine now, but firing pins were failing just as often, or even more so than before. The loaded chamber indicators were becoming noteworthy for losing their crosspin and blowing free of the pistol. Jams were still too common, just from poor feeding alone. Many found that the slide did not lock open reliably because they would just sort of accidentally ride their thumb on the slide release during firing. Also, that pressure point of the grip safety was too dang high. It created an unnatural shooting grip and required too much torque. And finally, it was felt that the pistols were just plain unsafe in the hands of enlisted men. Yep, we're still suffering from the automatics are too dangerous line, and to be honest, I don't actually entirely disagree. I'm going to say something controversial here. Actually, you know what, let me show you. Alright, let's do a little quick comparison. I have a Colt New Army model of 1901, rough, but still here, and we have a Colt Trials model 1907/09 semi-automatic pistol. I want you guys to take off your current year brains. Most people who watch my show are highly familiar with semi-automatic pistols. A lot of you may use them and carry them every day. That means that you are a little spoiled on how this works. You think it's perfectly sensible to understand how to ready and make safe this particular gun. But remember, over 100 years ago, the people involved likely had no experience with any sort of slide-operated semi-automatic pistol, let alone a semi-automatic pistol at all, and they had tons of experience with this guy right here. So let me make a quick case. If we want to load this particular revolver, what do? Well, from our dominant hand that's already using it, a right hand at that time, lefties were forbidden, we would pull back the latch, and then we can either let gravity flick it open, or we can manipulate it with our left hand, eject any cases that might be in there, and then we can manually load 6 individual rounds. So if we're kind of do a quick comparison here, this is the part that the Revolver is not that great at, because, I'm sorry I'm doing this so backwards for the camera, you guys, I should be doing it this way for visuals, because we have to individually load these rounds. There's no speed loader available to the government at that moment, at least not in issue. There's some patents out there, no one's really using them. So if we then chamber this guy, we can just slap it in with the left hand. This one's gotten a little old, so I have to ease it in. But at this point, we're done. All right, so just for a reminder, that was 1 to open, left hand comes in, 2, and then left hand individually loads 6 cartridges, and then 3, and that's it, we're ready. The gun as it rests is a single and double action with a rebounded hammer. That means it's perfectly safe to carry around like this, as long as you don't pull on the trigger very, very hard. I mean, very hard. I cannot, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's been accidents in which somebody managed to get one of these heavy triggers all the way back, but they're extremely unlikely and they don't require any thought whatsoever. If you go into action and you don't want the ungodly double action trigger pull, you manually cock back the hammer and then you get a nice like boom, okay? This is what everybody was working with when they wanted to unload the gun. And by the way, at a glance, let me make sure you can see this. At a glance, we can see that the pistol is loaded. I mean, you can see those rims of those dummy cartridges, and they're a flat kind of purple color. They're not that nice shiny brass that we would expect. I mean, even if it tarnishes, you could get real used to being able to see into your gun. So we know the gun is loaded. We can see the gun is loaded. We want to unload it. What do? We open our latch, push this guy out with our left hand, push out all the casings with our left hand, which would come out easier if they were actually spent casings. And then we close her back up. And we can see at a glance that she's unloaded. When we inspect her, there is only one place to inspect: the back of all these chambers in the cylinder. We can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, see they are all empty. At a glance, boom, we're done. On the semi-automatic pistol, we have to use a detachable box magazine, 7 rounds of 45 ACP, all right? When we want to load these, let's compare it to the revolver. We don't have to release anything because the magazine is currently out of the gun. However, if we had spent rounds, well, not even spent rounds, if we had previously used a magazine, we would have to remove the previous magazine two-handedly and then two-handedly insert this magazine. So in terms of being a two-handed loading operation, we're equivalent to the revolver. However, we're a lot faster because we can just sort of shove all 7 rounds in at once. We don't have to manually load 6 individual rounds. So point for the semi-automatic. But at this point, all hell breaks loose, because tell me the difference between this gun and the same gun unloaded or with an empty magazine. There's no visual indication of a loaded magazine, which is probably why they were testing the Powell loaded, the Powell indicator for their magazine, which would show a cartridge count and the fact that it was loaded at all in the magazine, which is something that you could see at a glance on the revolver. Now, we'll index one into the chamber by racking our slide. And this is again where we have an issue, because on the revolver, we just knew that it was loaded the minute it was loaded and it was ready for action. We just pulled the trigger. The difference between this and that is once we've put in our rounds, we have to do something that is not pulling the trigger, right? It's not ready to fire. We have to rack that slide. Once the slide's racked and one is in the chamber, we have a light single action trigger pull, just like a revolver that would have been cocked to single action. So that means it's like loading, if you're a guy who's always had the revolver, it's like someone told you that you had to go to single action to load your revolver and then ease the hammer down. You would think, that's stupid, why not just load the revolver and never mess around with single action? You're gonna have an accident that way. But this is how the mechanism works and we have to do it. So, we already have the extra step of racking the slide, and now we have another extra step of having to manually lower our hammer to a safe position. And despite the automatic safety block, and the sear block as well, you don't really see those, right? So if you're just an officer or infantryman that's not super familiar with this mechanism, you think that this is a very, very awkward and potentially dangerous maneuver. You don't know that there's a mechanical system helping prevent you from having a disaster while this is happening. You can see why those systems were obviously added to prevent it, but if you can't show it happening, people can't trust it, all right? So we've got the hammer down, excellent. Chamber's ready, and that means we can put it in our holster. It also means that the only way to shoot this compared to the revolver is single action. In other words, we must draw, cock the hammer to ready, and then we can start firing. There is no draw and immediately dump 6 rounds with double action heavy pull, because you have to get past that first single action cocking of the hammer if you're carrying it in this state. You might see why they would want to go for a manual override safety later on, because 1, it's visible, and 2, it allows you to go around cocked and locked, ready for action. I know I'm kind of overselling it, but it's really important to see the mental evolution of where the problem is and then the attempt to adapt to the problem. So at this point, the gun has a loaded chamber. Now they did add a mechanical feature on this one to have a loaded chamber indicator. It's not working at the moment because of the difference between the snap caps and the original ammo and probably some wear, but there it is, popping. That little guy right there is telling us whether we're loaded or not, all right? So in theory, if you're trained on the gun, you should know you have a loaded chamber. How many people truly pay attention is iffy. So when we go to unload, like the revolver, it's a two-handed operation, so no big deductions there. However, once we pull this magazine out, we're not done. On the revolver, if we empty the magazine, that's it, it's empty. We swing out the cylinder, pop everything out, done. In this case, we pulled out our big old pack of cartridges, tossed it aside, gun's still loaded. There's no magazine disconnect, which is a safety we see later for exactly the same mental reason. But no, this guy's hot. If you were to cock this hammer back and then manage to grip safety and pull, you could have an ND, and they probably were during their trials assessment. As a matter of fact, this particular situation is still a common cause for negligent discharges in the year, 2022. It hasn't gone away. We still hear about these all the time, and it's because human beings are dumber than we like to admit. We can't see the danger bean, so we don't believe in the danger bean until it goes bang and it wipes out the wall and maybe the dog bowl, right? This particular problem is exactly why you see so many officers resistant to issuing these to common troops. They believe themselves capable of learning the system, and yet they have to basically deal with a theoretical bullet, right? They don't want to have a theoretical bullet wandering around in all of their individual troopers who they've seen do many stupid things. Now, the modern person, we're completely used to this method of operation and take it as a necessary risk that we simply train to prevent. But at the time, why would you add the risk just to get an extra round and maybe a faster reload? Plus, they keep jamming. Now, some did find the pistol superior. At least one whole troop said it was easier to train their new members on marksmanship over the revolver, but the general and official opinion was that while the Colt automatic had potential, presently the .38 caliber New Army revolver was better suited for general issue. Once again, further trials were recommended, which might sound exhausting, but in hindsight, we actually know that this was the right decision. Ultimately, the 1907 and 1907-09 modifications were just some lipstick slapped on the 1905. The guns simply weren't built well enough for the .45 caliber cartridge. Now, this is no shame. To this point in history, no one had managed to get a good .45 caliber automatic into the hands of any government official. In theory, with German powder, the Luger had been capable enough, but DWM felt it wasn't really worth the effort to go further themselves. All the others but Savage failed out miserably, and presently Savage couldn't keep their guns in one piece as they beat themselves to death on the ammo. To my knowledge, the only other successful .45 automatic of that period would be the Webley self-loader, which we've already explored on this show. Honestly, the Colt 1905, Webley self-loader, and Colt 1911 would remain the only .45 caliber automatics of any real merit or production numbers for quite some time. Heck, most of the guns that shoot .45 ACP today are descendants of the Colt and the Webley locks merged together. Now, like I said earlier, Colts and Browning would choose to take a much more aggressive turn after the failings of this guy right here. With the new designs in trials, this would actually just end up being returned to ordnance, bypassed. By December of 1911, only 185 remained, the missing 15 likely being destroyed in testing or pulled apart to repair others. In January of 1912, they were condemned as surplus and put up for sale. 5 were withheld for museum and reference collections. For the remaining 180, it was estimated that it would cost $5 each to make the pistols serviceable enough to sell as functional across the board. This was deemed too much of a burden, and they were sold as is. The listing included the 180 pistols, 183 extra magazines, various parts and accessories, plus 181 Savage pistols, along with their spare magazines, etc. Francis Bennerman bid on and won the lot at a supposed price of $1,644.44. I have no idea if that number was just for the Colts or for everything together. Okay, that wraps this one up for now. Now, just a reminder, we don't have access to a Colt 1909 or 1910 Trials pistols yet. And by the way, there is a commercial product that is a 1911 made to look like a 1910. We can't use that, it's a different gun. So we're going to let this sub-series idle a bit in the hopes of an opportunity that might turn up. And while we wait on that, well, we can at least go hear from Mae on what it's like firing an actual US Trials pistol, the 1907/09. All right, once more, we've made room for Mae.
Hello.
And we have the 0709 Trials pistol.
That we do.
Do you know how rare this is?
Incredibly so now that you've done this episode.
Theoretically, one of 205 ever made, but in the private market, what's left? Less than 180, minus a couple that didn't get converted to 09s, although I guess that would make them rare.
In other words, big thank you to Sven from Manticore Arms.
Yeah. Would you have shot it if I told you how few there were?
Yes, but more tentatively, I suppose.
Just delicately.
Yeah, just delicately shooting.
Yeah, Sven, thank you, homie. This has been a great run. He's been the major donor for the entire Colt lead up. However, Sven is out of guns.
Yes.
So, unless an 09 or 10 turns up, we're going to have to take a pause on this particular series.
To see if any of them flesh out, essentially.
Yes, and I know I'm going to get a lot of emails that say, I live next to this museum, I wonder if they have one. If you don't know they have one, I can't email every museum in the world just asking blindly. It never goes well.
That's not how you build friendships.
Yeah, the cold call doesn't work like you'd hope it would. So let me know if you know there's one in a collection and that they are willing to talk to outsiders, because there's at least one that I know of that they're completely unwilling to talk to anybody that's not part of their organization.
It is unfortunate.
So,
we're keeping our fingers crossed.
In the meantime, maybe Sven will get rich and track down one of his own.
Yeah.
So Sven has Manticore Arms, if anybody wanted to help with that somehow. That YouTube might not let us say. But in the meantime, let me give you that. Let's talk ergonomics. And there's probably not a lot to say, because we're coming from the 1905.
So I guess I could probably compare them for their differences, essentially, because it's a lot like the 1905, profile-wise. I mean, it is slightly bigger, and it feels like it weighs slightly more.
Is it bigger or just heavier?
I think it's slightly bigger.
I don't think it is.
I think it is.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's the exact same.
Oh, no, maybe it isn't.
Maybe
it's just because I'm holding one in front of the other.
Yeah. One's closer to your face.
Also,
that's called
perspective.
perspective.
Cool. How many people can say they've rubbed a 1905 and a 1907 or 9 together? I think I might be one of the few people that's done that.
They're friends now.
Yeah, that's how friendship happens. Anyway, so yeah, okay. But it does feel slightly heavier. I will say that. Maybe
there's more crap in it.
Oh, okay. Well, that would totally explain that then. Yeah, the frame looks about the same. The length looks the same. The grip looks the same. Now, I do have a grip safety on those 1907-09, so that's pretty cool. And that hammer spur, definitely going to be easier for me to operate. As many may recall, in the 1905, I struggled on camera in the
Let's just
Mae conversation.
Okay, hurry, cock the hammer, go.
Oh my God, we've already been through this.
Come on, cock it. Cock it one-handedly.
They would hold their fingers on
Yeah, so this is not, we're not modern safe. They would have left their finger in there. Is there any world in it?
No. I'm trying so hard, and you're just going to be able to do it. Yeah, I hate you.
To your credit, though, it's not the best way to do it because there is no spur on this hammer.
Right.
I'm actually having to pull.
I see you're hooked your pinky underneath.
I'm having to pull into the rotation point, right? And I'm directly in line with it, so I'm kind of rocking over the center, and it really sucks. I'm putting a ton of force into the pad of my thumb, and it's kind of
I can feel the force here and on my pinky especially.
Now let's try this one. Let's see. Give it the Mae test. Oh, girl hands approved.
Girl hand approved.
So
it's already better.
Yeah, you doing that's like me doing this.
Yeah, kind of.
So it's a gun so well designed that even a woman can use it.
Or it was designed for my hands.
We'll get into that in a minute. All right. The other big difference, just ergonomically, though, is going to be that grip safety.
Yep.
Because otherwise, they're identical. Same heel release.
This one also has that chamber-loaded indicator.
But you're not interacting with that. Not until we load up.
No, not until we load up. You're not wrong.
So, actually, we'll talk about that in just a second. But let's do the grip safety for a second.
Okay.
Are you cognizant of it? Like, if you point that gun, does it feel different?
So... It feels obviously different because there's obviously something there and there's something that's being depressed. That much I can tell. Now, do I think I'm having to put a lot of force onto it? I want to say no, but then again, because I was shooting 45 out of this guy and I noticed the recoil was very substantial, stout.
And you cheated because you had already shot the 1905, so you knew it was coming.
Yes. So I gripped this pretty... strongly.
You baked the cake.
Yeah, I made sure that cake was baked. And so the grip there was already pretty solid. So I don't think there was going to be any question of if that grip safety was depressed or not with this one.
So let me think. Hold on. I've got a rack.
Okay.
Cock the hammer back. Hold that nice and loose and at full extension.
Okay.
And I'm going to just put this in here so that it won't drop that hammer too hard on a very rare gun.
Okay.
And then just nice and loose. Hold it and just try to pull the trigger. There it was. Did you have to squeeze?
No, I was just pulling through.
Oh, you're pulling slow.
Yeah, I was just pulling slow.
Okay, so
I'm
no
so
problem.
used to having to pull slow.
Because trials reports were saying that for a number of men, this grip was too high. In the sense that if they were taking a loose sort of targety grip, like here.
Now, do you want me to do the same for you? Is that too high for you?
So I'm going to loosen up my grip. And frankly, actually, let me stop and just zen out for a second.
Your eyes, yeah.
And just point. And if I was target shooting, I'd be here. I'm pretty sure, if you hold that for me, I'm pretty sure that that's going to go click.
All right.
Ready?
Yep.
You got 2 layers?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's going to go click. Let me see if I can, however, hold it loose enough that I still think I could shoot it and have it do that. So one more time.
Okay, let me double layer.
Okay, I'm going to go real loose. I'm going to let my thumb ride back a little bit just to give it some gap.
All right.
So I could shoot a gun this way and not lose control of it. Yeah, it's not there.
Oh, really? Okay.
I have to squeeze. I have to close in on the thumb, which is interesting because the other complaint that they had was that they would ride the slide release with their thumb by accident.
Okay.
And then, therefore, it wouldn't lock the slide open because they were riding it at the last moment. I have that problem with Steyr M9 handguns.
Really?
As a modern shooter, I always slap the paddle in Steyr M9.
To slap the paddle.
So, if you think about it, that might have played into it because if you're having to grip high and strongly, you're probably wrapping that thumb around even more so, and you're more likely to trip that. So, a lot of guys did not like how aggressively you had to hold the top of that.
Maybe it was designed for someone with smaller hands.
Well, it sounds like you were the person they were thinking of when they made it in the factory because Colt obviously did some ergonomic work on this.
Right.
They thought that this was going to be good. And yet... problem, right?
Right, yeah. No, it'd be a problem for you, which is why I can understand why they would lower that point of depression or levering, whatever you want to call it.
Now, there's technically both of us passed the test. Neither one of us are going to have trouble shooting the gun.
No.
But some people were. So those of you listening, some of you might be the kind of person that would hold this gun and go, why won't the safety disengage? Or it's barely disengaging.
Or you're having to death grip it kind of more.
So that would ultimately result in them lowering the leverage point on the grip safety. This is something we see in the 1911, is that it's much lower down in the grip. Now, the other thing about that safety.
Yeah.
Can you get hammer bite from that?
I actually really got worried about that because I remembered back in the day when you in particular were shooting your 1911, you ended up getting slide bite at one point, and I got concerned that maybe this was a potential for this 0709 for me.
Yeah.
And frankly, I never have that issue. I just don't think my hand has enough material. I mean, I think I could force my hand.
I'm looking at your skin. It's kind of on there.
If I force it, I can kind of get it to roll over in there a little bit, but I have to try. I'm trying to actually push it up. It's more natural.
Here, put the hammer down.
Okay.
And then just grip it. Go. Yeah, see, you're below it.
Yeah.
Now hand it to me. No, never mind.
What?
I meant so that I could grip it.
Yeah.
So if I do that, and I know it's going to be really small for you guys at home to see, but I've got a fair bit of skin. I mean,
you do.
About 1/8 of an inch of skin is over it.
You've got risk.
When this comes back on this hammer, it is absolutely going to, well, further make a scar on my hand. I have a scar
It's
from
like a
1911s.
permanent scar, yeah.
Yeah, from shooting the 1911s, I have a scar from just hammer bite with my fat hand.
Of course.
They didn't expect the modern diet when they designed this thing.
They did not. All that corn syrup, man.
But, so, again, you are everything they were thinking about when they designed this.
So that was the ideal 1907-09 shooter.
Now, those of you who curse hammer bite, I want to point something out. Even if you added a grip safety to this one with the old hammer style, it could never hammer bite me. It doesn't have a spur to the hammer.
Yep.
The first grip safety on this gun could not have hammer bit you. It was tucked away too much, and the spur for that hammer did not come all the way back down.
Oh,
The
fascinating.
big problem is, as those of you who were paying attention earlier, is that this gun is designed specifically to allow you to cock the hammer back and trip the automatic safety. Have you actually tried to do that? I don't remember if we did it for filming.
I don't think so, no.
So you should be able to lower that hammer one-handedly
Okay.
by just cocking it back all the way, pulling the trigger, and then easing it down. And that would allow you to one-handedly drop the hammer.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
And then the
Done.
thought process was, because there's a positive spring to always lock up the firing pin, even if you accidentally let that slip once it gets away from this guy by doing it one-handed,
Yeah.
then the firing pin will be locked by the time that the hammer makes it to it, and it will not discharge accidentally.
Cool.
So
I'm safe.
you like that much better than a manual safety, correct?
Maybe not necessarily. Well, no, there is an automatic sense to this. This is more modern, I want to say.
Okay, so live round in the chamber.
What is it? I'm going to have the chamber indicator on, so I'll know it's there.
Yeah, let's pretend there's a live round in the chamber.
Right.
Go ahead and cock the hammer back. Okay, there's a live round in the chamber. You've just cycled the slide and chambered one, right? Now, with one hand, make it safe by dropping the hammer.
See, that's the part where I'm kind of nervous as a shooter doing that in general, especially because I handle all these old guns. Most of the stuff doesn't have anything like that.
Yeah.
This is totally new
So
and
you're just going
different.
to let that hammer down. Like, you just cock it back, let it down, and the minute right there, already, mechanically, as long as the spring hasn't
Right
broken,
there.
as long as the spring hasn't broken in there,
I'm
the
gonna
firing
trust
pin can't be impacted hard enough to discharge the gun, right?
Yeah, I'm still going to let down slow.
I know. But what does that tell you? It tells you psychologically, no matter how much we promise that the firing pin can't go forward, do you believe it?
Well, it's like believing in something I can't see. It would make me nervous in general.
So if that loaded chamber indicator is pointed up and you're lowering that hammer down, how much are you sweating?
A little bit. I'm sweating a little bit. A little bit. But yeah, it's still rad to try out at least. At least it has it. It's got a double safety setup, which is really cool.
So once you start shooting, any difference between that and the 1905?
I really don't remember a major difference. Recoil was pretty much the same. The sights were the same. The trigger felt the same. I mean, aside from how it ejected the cases, that was the only reasonable difference. And, obviously the loaded chamber indicator, which on this 1907-09, I just distinctly remember it was a little more vertical in the ejection. That's about it.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think the right-hand ejection is only a problem if you're working in a line. You're a single shooter. You're right-handed.
I can totally understand it from a militaristic perspective of you don't want cases flying into your buddy's face.
Right.
Totally get that. As an individual shooter on the range, doesn't really make much of a difference where it's going as long as it isn't going more as super vertical. Like if it's hitting the brim of my cap, that's going to be a bit annoying.
Me and like Gen 2 Glocks just poof, right here every time, right? So
that's great. That's really what I want to do is be shooting the gun and be distracted by the cases flying everywhere.
So nothing to the ejection. Doesn't bother you at all.
Nothing super special now.
Okay, I'm going to be honest, getting behind the gun, other than the ability to manipulate the hammer easier, I don't feel any difference coming from the 1905.
Not especially, no.
And this kind of becomes a problem for Colt, because the 1905 isn't passing muster, the 1907-09 isn't really passing muster. There's some problems. And what they end up doing is, especially with John Moses Browning coming back into the design phase, they work up a gun that is built off of this gun.
Right.
It is not a variation. Like this Colt 1905 is a significant stepping stone, but stepping stone variation of the old 1902 military converted to 45. That is very incremental stepping stones from this.
Yeah, it really looks like they just continue the line into this one practically.
And then when they do the true 1909 and 1910 that we're going to talk about later, it's basically like they dig another pond and then bleed off from the previous one. And so features come over, don't get me wrong, there's lessons learned, but it's not quite as linear as it has been so far. It's a little bit more of a jump.
That's why I really kind of hope we do get our hands on some a 9 or 09 or 10 to try out.
Right.
Or at least play with.
I think it's great though because this guy right here locks in the final concerns and the final hopes of the next gun. So like the loaded chamber indicator becomes less important after handling this one.
Right.
The grip safety, however, becomes more important and gets further designed. The hammer tripping the safety is kept all the way through. This is the origin of hammer bite. For all you guys that like the old 1911s and you get bit up by them.
So this is the starting point.
This is where it started.
Hey!
And the interesting thing is it was done so that you could lower the hammer with one hand, and then they slapped a manual safety on after the fact anyway. Why didn't they just give us a decocker?
Right.
Instead of this that got handed down for It's interesting to see where things come from, though.
Yeah, it is kind of cool.
All right, so I know it's a trials piece.
Yep.
Would you take that over the 1905 if you had to get into a fight?
Yeah, I can't see a reason why I wouldn't take it over the 1905. It's already got improvements. It's got what we requested on the 1905, which was some sort of safety option.
Grip safety.
Yep, fantastic. It's got a better hammer spur. I mean, I personally kind of like the loaded chamber indicator option, but the idea that that's going to maybe fly off or was causing problems, not really keen on that. But if I didn't know that was going to happen, as a shooter, I'd be like, oh, yeah, that's really cool to know. I'd like the idea that I could actively see it was there.
I wonder how many early Colt 1905 sears just broke, because apparently that was a thing happening in this gun, and I don't think they're any different. Isn't that weird?
Interesting.
You never hear about that side of it. Anyway.
No.
For me,
I would like to know. You're not wrong. What about you?
I don't give a rat's about the loaded chamber indicator one way or the other, but I'm a modern shooter. I'm used to dealing with a loaded chamber. I wouldn't trust that device anyway because obviously it stopped working to a certain degree as it's worn out.
That's true.
What
about the grip safety?
This is the big thing. While the grip safety is a possible negative depending on your hand shape, for me personally, this gun has no way of being carried on the ready.
Right.
Because you're one trigger pull away from it going off unless you choose to put it down into the hammer down position, at which point you must draw and then awkwardly ready. I mean, look at that grip even I'm having to use.
Yep.
And point. And even if you put a spur on this and make it easier to use, like the later 1905s, great. I still have to ready. And so for me, I mean, hold on. We still have this new Army laying around. The new Army revolver, when it's used, you draw and pull the trigger. You don't have to play around with the hammer.
Nope.
Then why would the automatic meet? This is my problem. This one, while it wasn't standard, the standard was to lower the hammer. At least if I have my choice, I can choose to leave that cocked. And the automatic safety is blocking the sear. It's blocking the firing pin. It is safe to carry around like this.
All you have to do is grip and pull the trigger.
Yep, grip, safety's off, boom. And as a matter of fact, in a lot of ways, this system, without the manual safety, but with the automatic safeties engaged, especially the firing pin block, we're getting into a very modern concept that we still see on a lot of striker fire pistols. Look at your Glock. Glocks don't have manual safety. The later Steyr pistols, like I was mentioning earlier, the ones that accidentally ride, the first gen had a manual safety. Everybody hated it. It's gone now.
Yep.
So it's bizarre, but this is actually fairly modern in its concept of just rock the hammer back and then don't trip the automatic safety and you're good to go. So
I can't see why you'd pick the 05 over the 07 option.
Yeah, I'm going to say the one disappointment to me.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun shooting, the 38s up to the military 1902?
Yeah, that was great.
But it had the long barrel. It was a nice long grip, though.
Yeah, long grip. You loved that.
How much would you love this in the 38 cartridge?
Oh, man, that'd be amazing in the 38. Are you kidding me?
Right, you get your grip
45 feels a little too much in this guy. 38 would be just... I breeze through it.
You get your extra round back, because you'd be back up to 8 or 9 rounds.
That's true.
Yeah, and it'd be in a nice square body. I find that this would be the best of the 38s, but it's not a 38.
That'd be really cool, though.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
So what's your thoughts overall? Are you excited to get to the 1911?
I actually really am. I'm looking forward to it. I hope we get to at least have our hands on an 09 or 10 at some point so that we can actually feel those differences. I'm really kind of curious about that.
I would really like to get them in front of the camera at the very least. And right now, we don't even own photography on any of this.
No.
We could borrow from some other guys, but we haven't even photographed them ourselves. And it's always better to handle things because as much as I try to read everything, until I get a gun in my hands, I didn't see how the safety really worked on this for the
There's
firing
some
pin.
nuances that you just miss out that you don't really get from 2D that I hope our show actually gives a good perspective on a lot of this, for giving you guys more of a 3D experience.
Yeah, we're trying to bottle every little detail that's been lost. But until we have that moment, we're just have to sit tight. Thankfully, not one single person has ever asked us to do an episode on the 1911.
Oh, God, no.
So it's not really a high priority.
We can let that sit for years.
And we can get back to our regularly scheduled content.
You mean revolvers?
Yeah, we could redo the Colt New York.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching.
These guys, like the few occasions it's happened that's a legitimate creepy guy, they just want to see you in your underwear and they're just telling you that.
Yeah.
And they have no concept of the views.
They usually don't have a response when I ask why. They go, the few that have asked, there's been a single word response, and it has been, what? like very confused. What?
What? Why did you ask me that? Why did you tell me I should be in my underwear? What the f*** is wrong?
It's amazing.
I've really developed a neurosis, frankly, because we will do these amazing videos and I turn around in the comment section or even talking to me months later, I will make a whole video piece by piece explaining why this assumed story was frankly made up. And then I will have people a month later run into me at a gun show and be like, hey, I saw your video on whatever. Wow, it's crazy that turned out to be true. And you go,
what?
No, I said the opposite. And they're like, yeah, haha. And then they're just gone. And they're not kidding. They just believe the myth still. They didn't listen to a word I said. And I'm going, oh, Jesus. The whole thing has a one screw takedown. Not takedown, but to sort of just fold it open so you can oil it or whatever.
Yeah.
But then when you do that, the two mainsprings are pressing so hard that to put the screw back in, I had to use two hands in a vise.
And my
And then
hand.
you put the screw in for me.
Yeah.
And I'm going, what on earth was the idea about, like, why make it one screw if it's one screw from hell?